Alexandrian, founder of AtoZ Communications, and this is the Brand Stories podcast. This is where we discuss everything related to marketing, public relations, and branding. This week's guest is Jeff Morgan from Elements. He has been a marketing dynamo behind that brand, helping to raise the industry's awareness as far as financial health, which is a major goal of Elements. Jeff lays out several steps that financial advisors should take so that they can have a doable content creation process. I'm very fortunate to have Jeff on the podcast today. You have been a marketing powerhouse with Elements, really taking that brand and amping it up. So I'm super excited for all the things that you can share with the audience.
Hey, great to be with you today. Excited.
Of course. Thank you. So as far as your favorite brand, what would you say that is?
Well, one of my long-standing favorites is HubSpot.
Nice. And so what's the thought behind that? Why do you love it so much?
I come from a marketing agency background, and HubSpot was one of the pioneers of what we would call inbound marketing. Mm-hmm. And inbound marketing is essentially using content marketing to drive inbound leads rather than more of a direct response or like a cold outreach type sales playbook. So I've always really loved HubSpot because they were the first brand to really embrace the idea of delivering high value content to their audience to build trust over time and then convert that trust into sales. They did it for themselves very effectively, but they also taught a lot of other people how to do that.
And that's something that you guys are doing at Elements. You're serving it up between podcasts, between stories and whatnot, social media. I mean, you guys have really mastered the art of that. So kudos to you.
Thanks. Yeah. That's kind of been my calling card from a marketing perspective in my career is building really strong content marketing programs that drive leads into the business at a affordable cost. I'm not one of the type of people that don't believe in any kind of paid advertising because I do that as well, but building a big audience through a podcast like what you're doing or through other channels like a YouTube channel or an email newsletter is a great way to build brand equity, brand affinity, and really help people to understand the value you can deliver before you ever try to sell anything. Yeah. It just makes the long-term B2B or considered purchase sales a lot easier if people know you and they trust that you're an expert in whatever niche or industry that you're working in.
So to that end, for financial advisors who might be saying, I feel like I'm doing content marketing, but it's not really generating me anything back. What do you feel like is the secret sauce to really getting that content that engages with an audience?
Well, I've developed a framework or an acronym for how I think about that called FIRE. FIRE stands for frequent, insightful, relevant, and entertaining. And so if you create content that hits all four of those things, then you will start to build an audience because people will resonate with your content. And over time, you have to be patient in terms of like building that relationship. So I would think of any type of content marketing similar to a personal relationship that you want to develop. So you can't go into a bar and propose marriage to the first pretty girl that you see in the bar. You're going to get almost a 0% acceptance rate. And anybody who says yes, you may not want to be married to them anyway, right? So what you have to do is like go in and build a little rapport, provide a little bit of value. Maybe you buy them a drink and essentially earn the opportunity to continue the conversation. So if it goes well in that first conversation, you can maybe ask them out for a cup of coffee and then to dinner, and then maybe we're going to go, and the relationship builds trust over time. And eventually, if you're a good match for each other, you can ask with 100% confidence that person to marry you, and they're going to say yes almost every time if it's a deep enough relationship before you ask. So that's the way I think about marketing and content marketing, is that you have to be patient and build that relationship. And then when the time is right, you'll be able to close the deal. For advisors, the way that consumers buy financial advice is that they have spikes of financial anxiety or spikes of financial, requirements where they have questions that they need answered. So maybe they get an inheritance, or maybe they want to buy a new house, or maybe they feel they want to reduce their debt payments, or maybe there's all kinds of moments in their life where they need to seek financial advice. And the idea of content marketing is that you'll be there all the time in the back of their mind and building trust so that when those spikes occur, they think of you first.
Yeah. So first of all, I love the metaphor that you used, because as I'm thinking about it, obviously not being the one who's ever proposed before, but having been asked, I'm sure that you don't want to feel like it's a 50-50 if she's going to say yes or no. That puts yourself in a very awkward position. So I love that analogy. And secondly, it's probably sad and shows how much I love Disney that I thought of Anna in Frozen, and that's obviously they ask each other, but that's disastrous if anyone hasn't seen the movie. But
Yeah, for sure. That's a good
um,
example.
yeah, exactly. But so when it comes to frequency, so it's interesting, at least among some of the clients or prospects that I meet, some of them will feel like a frequent amount of time is like once a week. And gosh, if you just do something once a week, how's that ever going to work? So is there an ideal frequency? Is it a few times a week? Is it a few times a month? Is there an ideal?
Well, I think it depends on the medium. So for social media, you have to imagine whoever's following you doesn't see every post that you post.
Mm-hmm.
So frequency on social media should be a lot higher than once a week. It should probably be like multiple times a day if you really want to build your audience and have a lot of people see your content. But other mediums like are probably best on a less frequent cadence. Email, for example, you probably don't want to send people multiple emails a day. Maybe once a week would be appropriate, especially given the prospective client's interest in your topic. This is personal finance. It's probably not something they want to think about every single day, but you do want to be there enough so that you're there, like I said, when the pain occurs, or you've been there recently anyway. So, and as far as podcasting goes, I think you could go as much as a daily podcast, but it is pretty difficult to execute a daily podcast. And so I would probably say weekly. I've been the CMO for an RIA in the past, Dentist Advisors. We focus specifically on dentists, and we have produced a weekly podcast for, I think, the last 7-8 years without missing a week. And we've grown our audience to over 35,000 downloads a month there. And that is the primary driver of inbound leads for that business now. And so I would say that weekly works really well for financial advisors in the podcasting world, probably weekly to maybe every other week for an email. But if you're publishing a weekly podcast, you might as well send a weekly email that promotes that podcast content. And content in itself, like if you think of it as a hub and spoke in a wheel. So the hub is like that core piece of content where you're getting all of your insightful, relevant, and entertaining, like longer form content out of your brain. And then the spokes of that are all of the iterative content that can come out of that. So maybe your hub is a podcast episode, and then that can become an email, and it can become social posts, and it can become a bunch of different video snippets that you publish. But having that like hub is really important to making content scalable and easy to create.
You're absolutely right, because I can only imagine if you're just trying to basically throw things at the wall or whatnot, if you're not doing things in, like you said, in more of a bite-sized chunk, I could imagine it would be undoable.
Yeah, for sure. So I really like to encourage advisors to think about what is the easiest type of content for me to produce. Some people, it's a lot easier for them to write than it is to get in front of a camera and like perform. Some people, they're okay recording their audio, but the camera itself is the thing that makes them stumble a little bit. Sometimes writing like takes forever and you feel like you have to like wordsmith every single thing, and it's like not your thing, but you can get out in front of a camera and like riff and feel super comfortable. And it's the easiest way to get your insightful, relevant thoughts out. And so pick the medium to be your hub that is most natural for you to perform. So that way, when you have to do it on a weekly basis, it's not like taking a bunch of time. If you can sit down and do a podcast episode without a lot of prep and just like riff and be done and hand it off to somebody to prepare it and publish it and turn that podcast episode into an email and a bunch of social posts, then that's the best world for you as an advisor, because your time is really well spent and efficient.
Agreed. I love that. So with Elements, it seems like even just the brand itself is just so content oriented. Like you can take each tile and go through it. So for those who might not be familiar. And if you're not, you should be familiar because Elements is fabulous. As any people who listen to my other podcast might know, I am a user and my financial advisor is as well. But so take us through what Elements is and how you've been able to use the tiles and the language and whatnot to make content.
Yeah. Well, Elements was originally created as a tool to help financial advisors inside of Dentist Advisors, the RIA that I worked for, have better conversations with less prep time with their clients. And so it's essentially a methodology and a framework for thinking about financial health. And each one of those tiles we think of them as financial vitals. So same thing as like taking your blood pressure in a health context. Each one of those elements essentially represents a different area of financial health. And if you put them all together in one view, you can assess someone's financial health, their complete picture in kind of one snapshot. And it's different than other financial planning tools because typical financial planning tools like an eMoney or Right Capital are focused on projection-based planning, where Elements is all about snapshot-based planning. So you can see where somebody stands today and where their strengths are, where there's areas of improvement at a glance. And then you don't have to spend all of the time doing a big, lengthy analysis and projections and all the different variables that go into those. You can just look at it and be ready for a meeting with way less effort. And we actually just over the last week or two have launched a new AI feature in our product that allows advisors to have the financial assessment generated automatically by AI. And then they can just go and make light edits to it or heavy edits if they want to, and then publish it to their clients so that they can reduce that initial meeting prep time or actual financial plan down from like an average of 10 hours down to like 10 minutes or less. Wow. So it's really a way for advisors to save time delivering quick value to prospects and clients.
So thank you, first of all, for doing that. And so excited about the AI feature. As far as Elements goes, you guys have been kind of on the forefront of financial health, I feel like. So having worked with you guys a little bit before, you were bringing up that kind of terminology. And now it seems like the industry is sort of caught up and there's so much more financial wellness related material and announcements and whatnot. Does it feel gratifying to excuse us, we were here first?
Yeah, I think that it feels gratifying, and it's also like when new competitors enter the market, it's always a bummer. It's like, oh man, it was so easy when we were the only game in town. But I do appreciate the fact that the industry is moving in that direction because we've had a core kind of value at Elements that we want to reduce the cost of advice so that we can serve underrepresented, populations that have been underserved in the past. So if you don't have to spend as much time and money to provide great advice, then you can go down market and help people that maybe don't have as big of investment portfolios as you used to need. And so we're really proud of that and grateful that there's lots of forces in the industry that are moving advisors to a place where they can serve people that have less than 500 grand of investable assets. There's a lot of people that need that.
Yes.
So obviously.
Yes, we do. So do you anticipate that trend in the market's going to continue, or does it need a little bit more oomph to get to that place where advisors will say, yes, I understand that obviously the multimillionaire, makes me lots of money and arguably I have less work to do that versus the person who, like you said, has less than 500,000, probably needs just as much, maybe sometimes if they're in debt or whatnot, even more advice, but, is still obviously worth serving, like you said.
Well, I think that the big hurdle that we're still facing with going down market and serving people that are less affluent is that they are less likely to want to pay for financial advice because they just have less disposable income. When you're in a financial pickle and you have a lot of financial stress in your life, you need the advice a lot, but you can't necessarily afford to get it. And so the way that we see that evolving is that more and more advisors are going to start serving people through their employer. So through wellness programs and 401k management, advisors can reduce their cost of acquisition because they sell to one employer and then they get access to a full census of employees. And if you as the advisor can earn revenue from the employer to serve the census, and you don't have to spend as much time serving each person to give them good advice, then that's a new model. Or it's not that wellness programs haven't been around, but AI enabled tools like Elements will allow an advisor to go into an employer and deliver a lot more conversations and advice at scale than they could historically. And then when you identify private wealth management candidates within that census, you can upsell them in to the more traditional white glove financial planning model. So you reduce your customer acquisition cost overall because the employer essentially pays for that through their fees. And then as you upsell the employees into other things, you don't have to pay for that again. So it's a new kind of model for advisors to think about when they're trying to grow their practices.
Yeah. So I feel like for those advisors, if you do help somebody like get out of debt, for instance, obviously then they're getting toward that, hopefully multimillionaire status or whatnot. And who do they love the most? The person who helped them get out of that situation. So please keep that in mind.
Yeah. And if you think about that idea we were talking about of building relationships over time, that we talked about at the beginning, a great way to do that would be to be introduced by your employer to somebody who's earlier in their career, doesn't have a lot of assets yet, and start to help them when they're just getting started or when they're, not as financially healthy, help them to make those improvements like you're suggesting. Then how is somebody else going to come in and say, you should pick me when you've established a great relationship with that person already?
Absolutely. So if anybody listening to this is saying, you know what, I feel like my marketing is not anywhere near where it needs to be. My branding probably isn't that great either. What's like a first good step for them to take?
Well, I think that there's all kinds of marketing help out there. You can certainly reach out to a marketing coach that's specific to your industry. You can use the AI tools these days are really powerful at helping to give you a plan and a strategy that's great for you. You just learn how to do great prompting, and that's a great way to get free advice, essentially, as long as you feel comfortable and have developed the skill you need to get good responses out of one of the AI tools. I think that's a great way to go. And so that's where I would go, to one of those two places.
Yeah. And also, if you were lucky enough, if you could pick your brain, for instance, anybody would be on the right track with you. Just saying.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jeff Morgan. Just search for me and you'll see me there as the CRO at Elements. But I do talk to lots of advisors about their marketing strategy, and I do coaching with advisors as needed. So feel free to reach out if you've got any questions and I could help you out.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you again, Allie.
You too.